Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man, famously said, "The first 100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on 100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit. But let's see if he's actually right or not. In this video, I'm going to show you the maths behind getting to your first 100,000, and we're going to discover whether getting to your first $100,000 is the hardest or not. If you invest $100 a week with an 8% annual return, it would take you 12 years to reach your first 100,000. But to go from 100,000 to 200,000, it would only take you 6 years. And to go from 900,000 to $1 million, it would only take you 1 year. So it looks like Charlie Munger was actually right when he said your first $100,000 is the hardest. In this example, once you reach your first $100,000, you're actually 1/3 of the way to $1 million. And the reason why is because of compound interest. The first $100,000 is the hardest and it always takes the longest. But once you reach your first $100,000, it gets easier because it gets easier to make more money as you have more money invested. In this example of investing $100 a week, you can see that in the first year with an 8% annual return, you would only make $400 in interest. But in the last year, leading up to that $1 million, you would make over $70,000 in interest. And the reason why is because you would have already had $900,000 invested. And because of this, even if you are investing the exact same amount every year, because you have so much more money invested, you make a lot more money in returns. What I find really motivating about getting to your first $100,000 is when you actually start breaking these numbers down by percentages. Using the same example, we can see that the first $100,000 took 1/3 of the time to achieve. But to go from $500,000 to $1 million, it takes about 1/3 of the time as well. So this really goes to show that the first $100,000 really is the hardest, and once you achieve this hurdle of getting to your first $100,000, it gets so much easier to build wealth. So don't give up.
Never give up!
And if you would like to calculate your own net worth, you can check out my completely free net worth tracker. And of course, the more that you invest, the faster you can potentially reach your $100,000 milestone. For example, if you invested $200 per week instead of $100 per week, you could reach your $100,000 goal in 8 years instead of 12 years. And if you invested $400 per week, you could reach your $100,000 goal in 5 years. Just remember that anything that we talk about in this video is general financial advice only and doesn't constitute personal financial advice. You can read my full financial services guide in my description. So now we know the maths behind why getting to your first $100,000 is the hardest, and why it gets so much easier once you reach your first $100,000 milestone. Let's go through some ways on how you can reach your first $100,000. First step is to start creating some goals. I never completed any of my goals until I started doing this. Instead of setting yearly goals, I now set 90-day goals. And 90-day goals are actually backed up by science too. Scientists have actually researched this, and what they found is that 90 days is the perfect time frame that you can actually start to change your habits. And the reason why I think 90-day goals are so much more powerful than setting yearly goals is because if you set goals every single 90 days, you can essentially achieve 4 times as many goals in a year as if you just set goals at the beginning of the year. Plus, I think it's a good amount of time to actually get some meaningful goals done, but not too long that you completely forget about the goals that you set at the beginning of the 90 days. An example of a goal to help you get closer to your first $100,000 is saving $10,000 in 1 year. You could start by breaking this big goal down into smaller pieces. $10,000 in 1 year is $2,500 quarterly, $833 monthly, $192 weekly, and daily that's just $27.40 per day. And if you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. The next step is to create a budget and review your income and expenses regularly. I'm not going to lie, the first time I did this, it was really confronting because what I realized was I was actually spending a lot more money than I thought I was. And something else that I realized was I was spending a lot of money on things that didn't really bring me value. Not only has this enabled me to save more and invest more, more, but I've also gotten a lot more value and enjoyment out of the money that I'm spending. One of the changes that I made to my expenses after reviewing my budget was that instead of buying a coffee and breakfast every single day, I instead bought a coffee machine so I could make my coffee at home and also made my breakfast at home too. This small change may have only saved me $15 a day, but $15 a day adds up to $5,475 in a year. And this money has enabled me to travel more and also invest more. And if you would like a completely free tool that can help you track all of your investments in the one place, you can check out ShareSite. I personally love using ShareSite because I do have a lot of different investing apps and brokers, and ShareSite enables me to put all of them in the one place so I can see the total returns for my portfolio. It calculates my capital gains, dividends, and it even produces tax reports. So if you would like to check out ShareSite for yourself, I've got a link in my description below. It's completely free for up to 10 holdings, and if you go on a premium plan using my link, you'll actually get an extra 4 months for free. The 3 biggest expenses people have are housing, transport, and food. So if you can find a way to save more money on these 3 biggest expenses, then this can save you a lot of money in your budget. Some ways you could save on housing is either negotiating your rent or switching your mortgage to a more competitive interest rate. You could also choose to move somewhere more affordable. To save on transport, you could take more public transport, and to save on food, you can start planning your meals more and eating more at home. Something really important to note is there's only so much we can really cut out of our budget. So the other lever we can pull is to increase the amount of money that's coming into our bank accounts. And the way that we can do that is by asking for a raise or switching jobs. Did you know that new employees are actually paid on average 7% more than existing employees doing the same job? And this can really compound over a lifetime. Studies have also shown that employees that switch jobs more frequently earned 50% more over their lifetimes than people who stayed in the same job for long periods of time. So if you haven't gotten a pay rise for more than a couple of years, maybe it's time to look for a better offer or at least ask for a pay rise. The worst thing that could happen is they say no. Another way you can increase your income is by starting a side hustle. There are so many different side hustles out there, but I think it's important to really consider what your unique skills are and what your unfair advantages are. And you can really use these advantages to your advantage. So once you're on top of your finances, the next really important step is to set up an emergency fund. An emergency fund is from 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved in cash in a bank account. And this is so that you have some money to rely on just in case any emergencies pop up. For example, if you lose your job or if any unexpected expenses pop up. I personally keep my emergency fund in a high interest savings account called UBank. They currently have a 5% interest rate, and the only requirement to get this high interest rate is to deposit $200 per month. And if you would like to try UBank for yourself, you can use my code Queenie30 for a $30 bonus. The reason why it's also important to set up an emergency fund is if you want to start investing, it's a really good idea to have this in place, because as we know, the stock market goes through highs and lows. And if we invest money into the stock market that we actually need to live and we actually need to take out, we could end up taking our money out at a bad time in the market. And let me show you an example to illustrate my point. The average return for the S&P 500 is around 10% per year, but not every year is a perfect 10%. Some years it can be more and some years it can be less. For example, in 2023, the annual return for the S&P 500 is 13.81%, but in 2022, the annual return was negative 19.44%. In 2021, the return was 26.89%, and in 2020, the return was 16.26%. I mean, can you imagine if you invested $10,000 in 2022, but you later needed to take that $10,000 out of the stock market? You could have made a loss of $1,900. But if you were able to leave your money invested in the stock market because you had an emergency fund set up, then you would have almost made your money back. And because of this volatility in the stock market, that is why it's recommended to have an investing time frame of at least 7 years. And this is because these returns can really compound when you do leave your money invested for long periods of time. If we invested $10,000 into US shares 30 years ago, we would have $176,000 today. If we invested $10,000 into Australian shares 30 years ago, we would have $138,000 today. And if we invested $10,000 into international shares 30 years ago, we would have $87,000 today. And when you compare that to leaving $10,000 into a bank account, we would only have $34,000 today. And that is the power of compound interest and leaving our money invested invested for long periods of time. What I personally do is I set up automated investments, so then my money is just working for me without me having to actually think about making my investments each month. And the platform that I use to invest regularly is called Pearler. And if you would like to try Pearler for yourself, you can use my code Queenie for a $20 credit. I've also created a completely free investing cheat sheet, which you can check out down in the description below. And write us a comment below with the word money in it, just so we know you watched this video all the way through. Thank you so much. See ya!